Well, hello, everyone. LinkedIn, X, Twitch, Facebook, and YouTube. My name is Frank Lavinia, and you can catch me on the following URLs on the socials. Most of the socials, I'm at Frank Diggs Data. FranksWorld.com is the blog, datadriven.tv is the podcast, and ImpactQuantum.com is where you'll find my quantum computing podcast. And I am toned, tanned, rested, and ready to go back to work tomorrow. For those who don't know, I've actually been on paternity leave because we adopted a little guy, had him on a previous stream, and he kind of stole the show. He's back at daycare today, so otherwise I'd have him on. Let me know in the comments if you'd like to have, we call him the mayor, the mayor back on the show, because he goes everywhere he goes. He's running for mayor. And he is definitely an inspiration. We adopted him. He's a family member. He's definitely an inspiration. And today, as he got dressed, he had a Batman t-shirt on. And I remind everyone to go forth and pursue your dream with the confidence of a 2-year-old in a Batman shirt. So in case you're wondering, hey, Frank, you haven't streamed in a while. I'll tell you why. I spent the last nearly 2 weeks in the Smoky Mountains of Tennessee. Beautiful part of the world. Beautiful place. Friendly people. The food was amazing. Barbecue was just off the hook, as they used to say. Really amazing. The only problem, though, is intermittent connectivity. I actually did attempt to do a live stream, but it just did not connect. The house we were staying at had a Verizon hotspot, and I actually wrote now 2 articles on this because this got me thinking. And it's like on paper it's about an 8-hour drive from Maryland, from here in Maryland, and in practice with kids and potty breaks and meal breaks and hungry kids and dogs, it's actually it took closer to 10 hours, and it gave me a lot of chance to kind of think on the way back. And I had all these grand plans of streaming by the stream because we rented a house right next to a river, and beautiful place. Went whitewater rafting, but the internet connectivity was just awful, like, in a word. I mean, it was just dreadful. It was like having dial-up again, and my kids were like, "What's dial-up?" And I was like, "Oh, my sweet summer child." But I mean, really, one person, one browser tab, that was it. That's really all I could handle, and even then, that was generous. In fact, I did some configuration and some troubleshooting of the hotspot to get a signal, and it was actually pretty interesting. I should probably write an article about what I did, but ultimately, it was the property was stream side. It actually had a separate outbuilding because that had a movie theater and another bedroom, and that was on the second floor and was closer to the road. And I went around with my phone, and some family members have Verizon phones, so I went around, found out that the balcony on that separate building had basically 1 to 2 bars of signal, whereas everywhere else had 0 to 1. So I put the hotspot there, and I was able to get 29 downstream and about 1 megabit upstream, and that was enough for my wife to work a couple of days. But I don't know what happened, whether the weather conditions changed or something got in the way. I was basically stuck at 3 megabit and I think at one point it's 0.01 megabit up. But it never really got much above 1 megabit up, which is very detrimental to streaming. Andy and I tried to record a podcast. We were hoping to record a podcast there, but I mean, it was no go. I had 0 signal. In fact, because we didn't cancel in time, the guest showed up on the podcast, and I said, "Hey, I don't think we have a stable connection." And then he's like, "Okay, we'll schedule." He was totally cool about it. And then I was talking to Andy, and then internet dropped completely for me. So didn't move. That's the crazy thing. trees, mountains really don't move, but who knows? Who knows what it was? But the whole experience got me thinking, like, effectively, I was cut off from. I mean, I can live without the internet for a couple of days, but the thing that really kind of struck me was, what if that's, home we have a gigabit, we have gigabit service, and um, so one of the things I did, because the Wi-Fi hotspot and it had crappy Wi-Fi signal on it, the mobile hotspot, we went to Walmart and got actually got it for my wife's. I guess she'd be my sister-in-law. Yeah, my stepsister-in-law. They had Wi-Fi problems in their house, and we were telling them like, well, we really need to, if you want to use the internet, you got to go to the other building. And everybody was like, oh, that seems kind of weird. But then I was telling her like we should have, if we had mesh like we have at home, and she's like, well, I need a mesh network for my house because blah blah blah. So we went to the store, set up the mesh network, and for a couple of days we had decent download speeds, probably about 15, 20 down, and but still the upload stream I never could get above. So if anyone out there, when I had a Verizon hotspot, I never had that problem. So I'm kind of surprised that was a problem there. And the whole experience got me thinking. One, what does? Hold on, my Ben, I'm over here. I'm on the deck. Hey, I'm doing a live stream.
Okay.
You want to say hello?
Hi.
That's Ben. He has a YouTube channel, Admiral Hashtag.
Yeah.
Where you post gaming videos and some of your animations you've been doing, right?
Yeah.
Cool.
Wait, show them the tadpoles.
No, I'm not filming the tadpoles.
I said show them the tadpoles.
I will show them the tadpoles. So we live near a pond, and he got some tadpoles, and there they are. I don't know if you can see them. Don't shake them up. You're gonna scare the crap out of them.
Nope, you can see
there
them.
they are.
Yeah, I'm trying to make it so you can see them.
Oh, there's 3.
Yeah.
Cool. He if you want to go get something to eat, we can go in a few minutes.
Right.
Or if you're not hungry, that's fine too. You're hungry? Okay. All right. So with that in mind, the key lesson I kind of took away was, one, we're really dependent on cloud services for a lot of things. And this is something that I've been kind of pondering, like, well, what about offline scenarios, right? Like what's the economic consequences for Appalachia or Appalachia? I'm not sure how you pronounce it. Let me know in the comments below which is the right way. Or is it kind of like, the and the, right? They're kind of the same thing. Tomato, as they used to say. But that got me thinking, like, with all of the AIs that are out there, the innovation, right? Most of it is being done in the cloud, right? Like most of it is being, we're thinking OpenAI, Claude, and a few others. And you are starting to see a movement. Now I can really appreciate this. So, one of the things that my previous role at Red Hat, I actually have a new role at Red Hat that I will be announcing tomorrow. But you know what? Since you all are loyal, loyal streamers watching this, I am going to leave the sales world for a bit, and I'm going into to be a principal technical marketing manager for our RHEL AI product, which is InstructLab. I'll have more to say about that soon. And I may be coming to a Red Hat Summit Connect near you in the future. I'll have some updates very soon. But the official announcement will go out on LinkedIn tomorrow. I logged into the HR system. I'm still not moved over, and that is a little concerning. But the interesting experience I had was, one of the things that Red Hat OpenShift AI has really had a lot of success in is in these disconnected scenarios. Now, obviously, I live in the DC area, right? So that's going to kind of influence my perception on why would you want to be disconnected from the cloud. And a lot of it is national security reasons, remote deployments of systems and things like that. And that I think is still a very valid use case. But I look at places like Appalachia, and this is the United States, and biggest economy in the world. And this isn't an Appalachian problem for two reasons. One, we used to live in Montgomery County, Maryland. Montgomery County, Maryland is borders Washington, D.C., the capital. And it is ranked among, depending on when you ask and what you want, it's either the fourth richest county in the country or first. At one time, it was first. But if you look at, and I think Loudoun County, Virginia, is now the first. But regardless, right, we're talking about the top 5, top 10 richest counties in America, and broadband is still a challenge there. When we were looking at homes, my neighborhood, my old neighborhood was one of the last. So the Montgomery County Agricultural Reserve, which is basically they're trying to slow down the development of Montgomery County, or at least channel it into areas where there's already transit infrastructure. Whether or not that's a good idea, that's not the topic here. The topic here is broadband. So when we were looking at homes that were just a quarter mile west of where we ended up living, maybe not a quarter mile, maybe a mile, not that far, no broadband. Now, this is pre-pandemic, right? So what was interesting about home shopping pre-pandemic was you would ask the realtor, like, hey, is there high-speed internet? And their question was, I don't know, I'll have to ask. And I know that I'm an edge case. I know that I'm a nerd. My wife's a nerd. The kids are developing into junior engineers. We are a 2-engineer family. I know that we are edge cases. I know that. However, as internet access has become more and more, oh, that was my foot, in case you heard that. As internet access becomes more and more just, consumption, the house, for example, we rented in the Smoky Mountains had no landline, which is crazy. So, like, if God forbid there was an emergency, the lack of connectivity is a serious, like, life-threatening issue, not a joke. And actually, my wife did cut her hand; she needed stitches. So, despite everything, and the little one had to go to urgent care. Despite all of that, it was still a relaxing vacation. So that's how awesome the Smoky Mountains are. But even in Loudoun County, when we were looking to move back to Virginia at one point, there were places where there was no internet, there was no fiber, there was no nothing. There was, now granted, we did want some, a house with some land on it and things like that, because if I wanted to live densely packed, I'd have stayed in New York. And it was just terrible cell phone reception. Like, it was just really interesting to see how in the wealthiest part, the wealthiest counties in America still have challenge with broadband access. So you think about a place like rural Appalachia, kind of what chances do they have? Now, to their credit, there was a lot of areas that did have excellent broadband. I took pictures and I wanted to send that to folks, and couldn't do it from the house, but literally at the stoplight to the main road, 5Gs, 5 bars. It was beautiful. So it was actually more time efficient for me to send a picture, to get in the car, drive about 5-10 minutes, send the photo, and then come back, which is kind of absurd. It's kind of this absurdist thing. And that got me thinking, like, well, you think about economic development, education, access to the internet isn't really, I wouldn't say optional anymore. I think there's a lot to say about this, and I've written 2 articles about it in 2 days. So clearly the head is spinning on this issue. But one of the things that is a big strength for OpenShift AI is the fact that it runs on OpenShift, which means you can run it in cloud provider or you can run it on-prem. And accordingly, there's a lot of business that we have where it's very popular because of data privacy, data sovereignty laws. Where data resides, where data is at rest, even if it's encrypted, still matters in terms of, it's not computer science, it's political science, it's the legal aspects of it. And I think we're going to see more of that. But more to the point, when you're in a disconnected area like Appalachia, or this was, Gatlinburg, pretty big town. Now, the center of town did have, good cell phones connection and things like that. But mountains apparently have a way of interrupting signals. And I think that when you look at where the innovation is now, small language models, yes, they are going to make a big difference in terms of their portability. I myself, in the basement, have access to my own private LLM server that runs Llama. It does run Llama 3.1. It is kind of struggling to run 3.1, but I've also been experimenting with other models that are out there. And this isn't a pitch for Red Hat or IBM kind of models. Like, my favorite one, oddly enough, is Falcon, which I'm not sure exactly who in the UAE built it, but it's an initiative from UAE, and it's a small model. Phi by Microsoft is a that's the word, quantized model, which basically means it's an optimized model to run in a smaller memory footprint. I'm going to need a lot more coffee to dive into the math on that. But the short of it is that small language models, and it's interesting. I think we need a Costco rule for large language models versus small language models, right? That is not really large language model now is, tens of billions, if not hundreds of billions of parameters. Whereas before, they were all large language models. Now we have this concept of small language models, which seem like they can do a good job for very particular use cases. They also have the advantage that they require a lot less infrastructure, and they could run locally, even on end devices, potentially phones, in browser even. I think that there's going to be a lot of innovation there, but I also think that we live in a very, again, living in DC area, we live in a very dangerous geopolitical world. I'm not going to dive into those topics, but if you look at what's going on, it doesn't take a rocket scientist, particularly post CrowdStrike outage, to imagine like what would happen if the internet did, if not go down, but large swaths of the country or the population were disconnected from this information infrastructure that is crucial to certainly our enjoyment of life, but arguably, our economy. What if I had all my data in a data center and the data was safe, but I couldn't access it? My customers couldn't access it. What would happen then? And we live in, because this is cyberspace is relatively new, and I always cringe a little bit when I say cyberspace, but because cyberspace is relatively new, there's no Geneva Convention on that. There's also the wonderful world of plausible deniability, right? You could have nation state actors doing very bad things, but it's really hard to tie it back to a particular source with the kind of certainty that you would have if it were what the cool kids call kinetic weaponry, which is basically kinetic is stuff flying really fast, bullets, missiles, that sort of thing. With that in mind, it creates this interesting space. And I was at an event that was kind of technology event. I actually spoke at it. And one of the other presenters who was in the military basically was talking about how, spectrum denial and how, he referenced air superiority, right? Which, obviously we're kind of familiar what that concept is. But also the notion of spectrum superiority, right? The ability to jam signals. And that is not a theoretical thing. We're seeing that break out in various parts of the world where military grade cell phone jammers are being deployed. Now, what's interesting about them is that, well, I guess they are easy to find because they are broad, they are very loud in terms of, they can be found. But GPS jamming is starting to be a problem when flights fly in and around Ukraine. I would imagine there's other parts of the world that is experiencing conflict where the same is true. The whole idea of wireless communication is wonderful, but wireless can be jammed with not a lot of sophistication. I'm not a radio engineer. I do know that mountains do get in the way of cell phone signals, but that got me thinking that, this is, this kind of this reliance on this connectivity to, the cloud or whatever. You can't always assume it. And I'm old enough to remember writing what used to be called Windows applications, right? Which they used to call smart clients, right? And this was in mid 2000s. So people were all gaga about browser-based applications. browser-based applications, they are wonderful, but their Achilles heel has always been offline use. Yes, now I know that there are tools around to get around that, but there was always this assumption when you were writing WinForm applications. I think I've even written some articles on this way back in the day. Might have been my first published article, was about tablet PC applications and how you can't assume you're always going to have a network connection. So you have to be able to work gracefully offline and online. Outlook, OneNote were often touted as the prime examples of how this happens. And I think that's a discipline software engineers really have to redevelop, because we are looking at a world where, the front line is only as far away as your cell phone. And the potential for havoc and mass disruption is, we kind of saw some of that with CrowdStrike, right? And that was not an attack in the traditional sense. It was an error. And I think we saw, and I'm not picking on CrowdStrike. I'm not, notice I didn't call out Windows or anything like that. It's just we are relying on these things, and we've not built them optimized for resiliency, or, as Nicholas Nassim Taleb would say, anti-fragility. Resiliency is the ability to adapt to change. Anti-fragile is the ability to get stronger from adverse events. His book, Anti-Fragile, excellent read. He is one of the smartest thinkers of our age. I think he's definitely underappreciated, but I highly recommend that one. And Skin in the Game is also good. Black Swan is also a good book. Pretty much anything he's written has been good. He is a person I would love to see meet in person one day. That's on the bucket list. But in any case, we're building these systems that, when OpenAI goes down, and it does happen, all these AI adjacent tools that are basically front ends for the OpenAI API also go down. And that has me wondering, well, we're building another house of cards on top of an existing house of cards. And now networks are resilient and things like that. But I just find it interesting that the industry needs to start thinking about this problem now, right? What would happen if there was a massive denial of service attack and this service was not available? Now, up till now, the answer has been, well, the cloud, you can rely on, 2 or 3 of these massive hyperscalers to kind of hire the best and do that. And that does work. It has worked so far, but, when you're looking at nation state actors, not just kids in their basement or kids in their garage messing around, spraying packets everywhere, when you're dealing with nation state actors that are well funded and advanced persistent threats, I think it's the term. The idea of a mass internet outage is not that far from the truth. And there are other things that can happen, right? Attacks on electrical infrastructure. It could be other things. And we're living in increasingly riskier times, and we're putting all of our eggs in these technological baskets. Even if an accidental outage happens, all of these AI models, or a lot of these AI applications that are actually just front ends to OpenAI, they take a dependency on that. And I think we need to salvage some of those older mechanisms, from the smart client software development days, where you can't assume you're always going to have network connectivity. Now, I had noticed that there are different applications on my phone. I have an Android, right? Not an iOS. So I've only tested that with Android. There were some applications that handled intermittent connectivity more gracefully than others. So the discipline is not completely lost, but the whole idea of just having an app in the App Store that is basically a front end for the website, or basically a facade for a website, is not very resilient. So with that in mind, let me know what you think in the comments below. I do check them. I might even have some chats. Do I have any chats? Yes, I decided to go casual today. I'm not working. That's why I have just the white t-shirt on. But with that in mind, I have a hungry kid who needs to eat, and home is where the bandwidth is. With that in mind, thanks for tuning in. And maybe I'll turn this into a podcast episode or whatever. There's definitely, it's nice having gigabit internet again. I can't tell you just how delightful it is to be able to speak with you all again. And with that in mind, I'm going to sign off and wish you a happy Monday. And I'm going to be fancy and play the outro graphics. Oh, before that, I wanted to, of course, give a plug for my book, Foundations of Sentient Marketing, Harnessing AI to reach and use the link shortening surface. Utterly. Okay. I'm getting a notification. Check out this book. It's available on Kindle. It's available in paperback. I wrote it with Candice Kahuli. Check it out. And with that in mind, oh, somebody's cooking something. With that in mind, now I'll actually end the stream. Thanks for tuning in, and see you soon.